Alright then gang, so now we've set up OpenAI in the project and now we want to start interacting with OpenAI to do things for us. So the first thing I want to do is I want to try using the chat completion service, which is basically going to give us the same kind of behavior that ChatGPT has, where we ask a question and the AI assistant produces a response for us. Now, the question we're going to be asking to begin with is that we'd like the AI assistant to come up with a video description based on a video title that we provide it with. So we'll be sending that question or that prompt to OpenAI, and then we'll get a response, which will hopefully be the video description. And in order to do this, we're going to need some user input to get the title of the video. Now, later on, we'll be creating a front end so that the user can just type that video title in an input field and press submit. But since we don't have that front end yet, we're going to use the terminal to get the title from the user instead. So to do that, we need the readline module, and we can require that at the top of the app.js file so that we can use it to create an interface in which we can then define the input and also the output of the interface. Now, we're going to store this in a constant, and I'm going to call that RL. And in our case, the input of this interface is going to be process.standardin or stdin, which basically means the input is going to be from our keyboard when we type in the terminal. And the output is going to be process.standardout, which again means the output is going to be output into the terminal, basically. So once we have that interface, we can then use it to ask the user a question in the terminal, and we do that by using the question method on the interface we just created. So rl.question and invoke it. And now, as an argument, we can pass in a string, which is basically the question we want to ask. So we can just ask for a YouTube video title. But also as a second argument, we can fire a function once the user submits an answer in the terminal. So once they press enter, and that function takes as an argument the answer that the user provided us with, and we can do something with it. So for now, I just want to log this title to the console to make sure that everything works. And we can test that this is going to be running correctly by opening up the terminal and typing node and then the name of the file we want to run, which is app. And when we do that, we can then see the question and we can answer the question and then hit enter to see the response. And the response is basically just the answer that we gave it. It's just logging it to the console, right? Awesome. So now we have some input. The next thing we want to do is use that user input with OpenAI to generate some kind of response. All right, so I'm just on the API reference, and then I'm going to go to chat right here and create chat completion. So we can see this is how we create a chat response right here. So we have this constant completion that we're storing the response in. And then we say OpenAI, which is what we've already created, remember, when we set up the configuration, and then create chat completion. And we invoke that and pass in an object right here, okay, with a couple of different properties. The first one is the model. So there's different models that we can use when we're using OpenAI, and they kind of work a little bit differently in the way that they provide responses. Now, if you want to see all the models, you can do that by clicking here. And if we scroll down, we're going to see all of the different models, I think, at some point. Are we? No, we're not. Okay, if you go to documentation and then go to models, you certainly do. So this is the one we'll be using, GPT 3.5. It's actually turbo. So if we click on that, it's this one right here that we're using. But there's many different models that you can use, and you can see the descriptions of them right here. So we're using this one, which is also here. And then the second property is the messages property. And that's an array of different messages. So inside this array, each kind of message or prompt, if you like, that we want to send the AI has an object. Now we define the role of that message, which is, in our case, the user. Now, when we get a response, we're also going to get a role property in that response. And that is going to be the assistant, because that is the AI role, the assistant. Okay. In our case, the role is the user because it's the user who's asking the question. The second property inside this object is the content, and that's the actual question or prompt that we're sending to OpenAI in order to generate that response, okay? Now, when we get a response, we have to grab it like this right here. So completion.data.choices, and then the first element inside that, and then the message. So that is the actual message response. Okay, now if we come down here, we can see the entire response that we get. So what we're doing is going into this object, then into the choices, then the message, and then the content. We can see here the role, like I said, is the assistant in the response, but these other properties we can use as well. Okay, so let's try this out, this function, create chat completion inside our project. Okay, so let's give this a whirl. So I'm going to create a couple of functions to kind of ask OpenAI a couple of different questions. A question for the video description, and also I want to ask a question so it can produce some tags as well based on the title of the video. So in order to create these functions, I'm going to create a new folder, and it's going to be called controllers. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because later on we're going to be creating an Express app and an API, and it makes sense to kind of organize the code a little bit now. You don't have to if you don't want to. You can put the functions in app.js or wherever you prefer. I'm going to stick it inside a controllers folder, and we're going to call this OpenAI controller.js. All right, so inside here, the first thing we need to do is require our config thing right here, this thing that we export. So let's say const OpenAI is equal to a require, and then we want to say .. to come out of the current directory, which is controllers, then into the config folder. Then we want the OpenAI config. So we're grabbing that export OpenAI, and now we can use that to interact with OpenAI. So I'm going to create a function, first of all, called generate meta. So by meta, I mean the video description and the tags, but call the function whatever you want. This is going to be an async function because we're going to use a wait inside it. And then as an argument, we're going to take in the title of the video. Now, remember, currently, we're grabbing that title right here when we ask a question in the terminal. So we can pass it in as an argument. All right. So inside here, now we're going to communicate with OpenAI. So I will say const description is equal to await, and then it's going to be OpenAI dot, and we use that method create chat completion. And inside here, we pass an object with those two properties, right? We have the model, which is going to be GPT 3.5 - turbo, like so. The second property is going to be the messages property, and that is an array, remember, where each object is a message. The role of this one is going to be user. It's the user asking the question, and the content is going to be the question that we're asking. So I will use backticks here because I want to output a variable inside it. So we're going to use a template string. So I'll say to the AI, come up with a description for a YouTube video called, and then we'll output that variable. So $ curly braces, title, which is this thing we're taking right here. So that's what we're asking to the AI. All right, now there is a third property I want to add, and that is going to be the max tokens property. And this basically says how many tokens you're willing to spend on this question, and it will cost roughly 1 token per letter. It's not exact, but kind of see it as 1 token per letter. It does change, but I'm going to say about 100 for here. All right, so that is all we need to do. And then once we have the description, we can access the message, the response message on that by saying, first of all, console.log so we can see it, then description .data .choices, and then it was the first element inside choices, and then it was the message property. All right, so let's see if this works. I am now going to import this thing, or rather we need to export it. So export, module.exports, and we set that equal to an object, and inside here we'll say generate meta. There is going to be another function that we export later, which is why we're doing it this way inside an object. Save that. Inside app.js, I'm going to import it. So I will say const, and then we want generate, if I can spell it, generate meta, and that is equal to a require. And then we want to go inside the controller or controllers function, folder rather, and then we want the OpenAI controller. So now we can use that function right here, generate meta, like so. And it's going to automatically pass in title right here, okay? So let's cross our fingers and hope this works. I'm going to save it and open up the terminal going to cancel out of this process and run it again. Node app. So YouTube video title, let's say complete HTML tutorial. All right. Let's see what OpenAI comes back with. Now, it does take 10-15 seconds to generate a response, but we should see it in a minute. And there it is. So we can see the role, which is assistant, and then the content, which is this big description right here. I'm not going to read it out loud. Feel free to pause the video and read it for yourself. But it is generally a pretty good description based on the title. Now, if you wanted, a more finely grained response, then you need to kind of tweak the way that you prompt the AI, make a better descriptive question. But that will do for us. So we have the description right here. We also want to generate tags based on the title as well. So we can go back to this OpenAI controller, and inside the same generate meta function, I'm also going to do a second request to OpenAI. Now, I'm actually just going to copy all of this again because we're doing exactly the same, but I'm just going to change a few things. So this time it's going to be tags that we want to get back. And then down here, we want to do this differently. So it will be come up with 10 keywords for a YouTube video called title. And then down here, we want to say tags instead of description. And then I think, my friends, that is pretty much it. I'm going to save that and open up the terminal again, cancel out of the process. And then we're going to run the application again. The YouTube video title, let's choose something different. We'll say Next.js crash course and press enter and see what it comes up with. All right, so there is the first response, which is the description. And here are the tags. So we can see we have server-side rendering, routing, static generation, code splitting. These are the ones as well. Probably not the best tags, but they're still pretty good, right? So that's the first kind of step complete. We've used this create chat completion method to get a response from OpenAI based on our question, which is pretty cool and pretty simple to do. So that's the first step. In the next lesson, we're going to look at how we can ask OpenAI to generate images as well based on our text description.